I started my martial arts journey when I was quite young, and that was a lot of a different approach to how I viewed training, martial arts training, as I put it, as I do now, and as I started viewing when I turned around 15 and started Thai boxing, because I started with karate. So that was more of a principle based and installing like respect and that sort of ideology into me. I think more so than really, having any proper combat experience. Um,
Yeah, I did a similar sort of thing with taekwondo, and it was always about they had like their ten tenets, and it was always like respect, honesty, perseverance, indomitable spirit, and some others. I think there are 10, but it was about this sort of idea of instilling these specific values in you and making sure that you
mm,
had them as a person. And I guess that's kind of what the old school thoughts on martial arts are. Like if you think of traditional martial arts, then you think of those things being instilled. You think of
yeah,
those as being the main benefits to you as a person when you do it. And I think that's, that was kind of, I think there's a lot of people's experience when they're very young of martial arts. And it is a good benefit, but always wonder if there are better ways to do it, because I don't know what your experience was, but with Taekwondo, for me, it was like they would tell you these ideas and they would get you to recite them, but there was nothing inherent about the sport, at least when I was doing it, that really did most of them. We weren't pushing ourselves to sort of have this perseverance and indomitable spirit because we were kids.
yeah,
But
yeah.
what was your experience with karate?
Um, I think yeah, there wasn't much of a of that, as you say, like pushing yourself, perseverance, as such. To be honest, I don't really remember having to like recite virtues in the same way.
Hmm.
Um, we I just remember doing a shit ton of kata, you know, a shit ton of
Yeah.
sets. And I became it's because it's a fairly easy thing to do as long as you're showing like a spirit in what you're doing and you have a good kya at the end. You have the good scream
Yep.
at
Yeah, I
the
remember
end,
that.
then you pretty much sorted. So I won quite a few competitions, but it I don't know, I think maybe because it was Poland, um and I had like an old sensei, let's call him. He tried to like push us a little bit, not too crazily, but he wanted us to have fun as well. He
Hmm.
was he was a really really nice coach. I really appreciated him, and I still appreciate that experience. It was really nice. Spent a lot of time like with us going to places and learning the experience of competing. To be honest, that was quite a good thing. But yeah, it wasn't really too crazy. It's only when I started, I always wanted to do Thai boxing. Whenever since I can remember, like since I was like 10 years old, I would because my dad would always show me fights and stuff. I would be like, oh, Thai boxing, Thai boxing. That's the thing I want to do. But he would never let me. He didn't want me to do Thai boxing until I was a bit older.
No, but
Which
I can understand that entirely because the thing with Taekwondo and karate, especially, I'm not saying it's like that everywhere it's taught, but you can have that same environment for kids with Taekwondo and karate. And I know you can tone down
mm,
Muay Thai, you can make it sort of basic kickboxing, sort of fitness classes, that kind of thing. But there's way more of a barrier to it for getting your kids to get involved in Thai boxing. It's a far more intimidating sport than having a little local karate or taekwondo class. But I think the karate and the taekwondo are good because they are accessible for people like that, and it's a good introduction to martial arts and for getting the benefits that and for sort of bringing you into the fold so that later on you can get the benefits of a more serious martial art like Muay Thai.
yeah, and I think yeah. So So that kind of then brings us on to when you start doing the more serious martial arts, like say even if it's boxing, but my experience is Muay Thai. Um, One thing that's very apparent is fitness. Or becomes apparent very quickly is that shit. There's a lot of fitness to this, and I need to be fit. Because hitting pads, as some people may not realize that are that are alien to the world of martial arts, is fucking hard. Just punching some bits of foam is actually pretty difficult.
Hmm.
Um, so fitness became a big thing for me, um, and running and um, doing like body weight exercises. That was a big thing, and I started at around 15, I think. So it was still pretty early, In as a that's a fairly young age, you could say, for starting a martial art like that, like so intense. Um,
Yeah, but the thing with the fitness part is that I don't know if it's very necessary for. Okay, training in general will give you that fitness aspect, and there's a lot that training in general will do, whether it's for martial arts or not. It's more than just the fitness, but there's no need to do the martial art to get that benefit. But there are other things that sort of
no,
I think martial arts focuses on more that other sports do not. For example, you know, back to the Taekwondo tenets, you had the indomitable spirit aspect. It was kind of like the fighting against all odds, kind of never giving up kind of thing. And I've played rugby and competed. Oh, actually, barely competed in anything else. I've played rugby, and there is that kind of fighting for something aspect. But
hmm
I think the fact that it's in a team is kind of a big diffusion of responsibility.
oh yeah,
Whereas,
absolutely.
yeah, and whereas martial arts, you're on your own. You got the crowd; they're screaming your name, and you got your coach, and you got your and they're in the corner. But at the end of the day, it's all down.
Yeah,
It's all on you. You can have the support, but if you want something that's going to teach you how to fight against odds and how to not give up and how to really push yourself, these sort of individual sports are going to be the very best thing.
absolutely. No, I totally agree, and and because you don't have, so like in a team, it's harder to hide, right? I mean, in the sense that if you're slacking, someone will pick up on that.
In a
But
team.
in 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 a team, yeah,
Yeah.
like in rugby or something. But in if you're training for yourself, if you're going to Thai boxing or boxing and you're training for yourself, it's the only person you're cheating is yourself. So
Hmm.
you learn to push yourself on your own. Like that's a skill that you need to um, acquire, so to speak. Because in the rugby or in the team, people are pushing you, right? You have it's more of a team effort, so you kind of feel pushed as a team. But when it comes to martial arts, that becomes more of an individual game, a mental individual game.
It's a lot more
Um,
internal.
yeah, no, absolutely. I think you're right in the. I think that the determination and the push. I definitely learned that through training Thai boxing.
Hmm.
Uh, I mean, of course, you have your pad. If you have a good person on your pads, they will, you have like the last minute of the round or something, and they're like, "Come on!" Like they can see you're pretty much dead, but they're like, "Come on, keep going," and you can choose to slow down and just throw a couple punches every 10 seconds, or you can be like, fuck, all right, bite down on your teeth, and that minute we're going to go hard. And
Yeah.
I learned to do that um, through Thai boxing. I learned to be able to push myself and know where my limits are um, through Thai boxing.
Yeah, and I think that if you do coast for that last minute, you'll know about it afterwards. You'll go away and you go,
Yeah.
I could have done better. I could have pushed more. And I think that's part of it that you learn to hold yourself a lot more responsible for this kind of thing. And I think uh, that's where this it's where high impact fighting martial arts break away from things like taekwondo and karate.
Mm.
There's suddenly a lot more pressure because you will get hurt
Yeah.
otherwise, and you suddenly
Yeah.
realize that you have to make yourself do this, otherwise there are going to be real consequences when you get into the ring.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Especially if you when you start sparring, that becomes so apparent. Because even in BJJ, although you're sparring, you're doing rolling and so on, it's not the same sort of experience.
No, I think it's because there's no danger of, okay, maybe there's not no danger of damage, but someone's not trying to damage you in BJJ. In
Yeah.
boxing and in general striking arts, someone is trying to damage you. They might not be trying to hurt you long term. A lot of people, I think, if they do hurt you long term, will be mortified that they've done that. But at the end of the day, the techniques are there and designed to hurt you and to damage you. And I think that's the difference about these high impact sports. Is that for me, especially, it's the first time I was voluntarily sort of partaking in something where there was a direct danger to myself. Now, obviously, to start off with,
Mm.
it's pretty tame and the interclub's quite light. But as you progress on and as you get more serious about it and get years and years more into it, the potential for damage starts to rocket up. And
For sure.
again, I think so. I think there are other sports that will do that. I think rock climbing, for example, you have to be sensible.
Oh
You
yeah,
have
that's a good
to
one.
right. You got to be sensible. You have to know what you're doing. You have to be careful, and you have to make sure that you're doing it. And it's still got that feeling of facing a big danger that fighting in a
Mm.
ring might do. And I'm sure there are plenty of other sports, generally sort of extreme sports, that might have a similar effect.
Yeah, for sure. I have some experience of mountain biking and like free ride skiing, off piste skiing, and that you can sort of simulate a similar scenario. But I think that the fact that the damage part of it is what really brings it to another level. Um, that really puts you on edge. Um, but with so what I want to talk about is also confidence um in yourself,
Hmm.
and confidence in the sense that you're not worried to walk down a dark alleyway or something at night, um
Yeah.
because I think for me, I'm quite, I'm a pretty skinny guy. um when I was a kid, I was always a little bit scared, um but as I started Thai boxing, and I was sparring with big guys. Like, I was the youngest kid in my gym, and there were some like pretty big dudes sparring with me, and I could hold my ground. Like, I could at least, I would give it back pretty well.
Yeah.
um, Sometimes to their shock, and that kind of put, I would say, a healthy confidence in the fact that I don't have to be scared to walk around at night or something, and be worried that I can't um handle a situation if it came to, of course, street fighting, whatever. It's a different story, of course, but there is that sense of confidence that you do get with training a combat sport, for
Yeah,
sure.
of course, and I think that's something that includes BJJ in that because I think
Oh, for sure.
that's something that includes any martial art where there is live training. So I think that's where it breaks away
Mm.
from, depending on the school of karate, taekwondo, things like that. Because even if you have even if you do have live training where you're sparring, if you're just touch sparring, you don't know what you can and you can't do. As soon as you bring in that live training where you're really throwing punches at each other, it gives you a sense of realism about how you could handle things. And I still don't think I'd feel comfortable walking down a dark alley, but I think
Yeah, I mean,
it does give me confidence that if I get into a confrontational situation, um, that it's in the back of my mind that if shit hits the fan, I am probably the most dangerous guy in that scenario, even after just a couple years of training. Now, I don't think
yeah,
you should try and get into fights. I think that's an idiotic idea. Someone's going to
but
have a
so
knife or something, but if you're just
of
in an
course,
argument, then you need to have that. I feel much more confident myself having that backup as the sort of very last resort if it really comes down to
yeah,
it.
yeah, and but I think, see, that's something that you, with the confidence, you realize, like, fuck, I really don't need to try and fight this person.
Hmm.
Like, I know I can handle it, so I don't need to prove anything. And that's that, I think that you do get that with training as well. It's like this sense of, I mean, you will get people who train and they just want to get in fights.
Yeah,
I think they're bit more few and far between, but can happen. I think it might be a bit more prominent in the boxing world,
maybe.
potentially. I think in Thai boxing, people are, if the gym is right, there's a lot more respect, and you try and stay away from any confrontation. Like, I think that you do have that instilled in you.
Well, it's that ego eroding idea, isn't it? Leave
Yeah,
your ego at the door. People talk about BJJ being a was it like a bullshit filter or something?
I like it.
It's the fact that you don't need to get into a fight afterwards. I think, and
No,
I don't. I think as I've got more confident in martial arts, I've felt less and less the need to be confrontational in certain situations. Um, I can just let things slide because I'm like, it doesn't really matter. Like I
yeah,
know
I
what will
wonder.
happen.
I wonder how much of it is, when it comes to being confrontational, how much of it is ego and how much of it is also fear, which maybe where with training the fear is less, so there's less of a likelihood to be confrontational. But yeah, ego definitely does play a part. But I've had the same thing with BJJ. Me starting BJJ, and now you're obviously more experienced than me, but I've maybe trained for like 8 months or something, or maybe 9 months, and it's definitely like I feel that before, I didn't have any confidence of being in the ground situation, and I know for sure that majority of fights end up on the ground. So now I feel like, okay, I have a bit more skill in the self defense type of situation. If things go to the ground, I definitely, if someone doesn't know jujitsu, I would be able to handle it.
Yeah, yeah. It's just I think having that live training and you know what works. There's no sort of questions in your mind. Does this work? Does that work? And I know that a self defense scenario is not going to use like proper BJJ. It's not never going to be pure, but I think just having the
No,
knowledge of how human body moves and how to effectively disable someone is super
yeah,
important. But I think on the flip
for
side,
sure.
in scenarios where I'd never actually get into a fight, maybe I don't know, sort of at work or just with other people. Scenarios where there's confrontation, but I'm not getting into a fight, I feel more confident standing up for myself in those scenarios, which I find a very weird effect because knowing now how to fight shouldn't affect them in any way. And yet I still
Mm.
feel much more confident now that I have trained for a number of years than I used to.
Yeah, and you've had fights as well, so
Yeah.
you've been in like high pressure situations
Hmm.
as well, which I think, not that it numbs it, but it definitely brings the anxiety down because
No, you're
you're
definitely
used
right.
to like a
Definitely right, because
yeah.
everything's a little bit less scary now when I'm like, I
Mm.
was in the cage a couple months ago.
You know how it feels to be punched. Like you've been punched. You've been even maybe rocked. Like I've been rocked, and I know how that feels. So and you know how to you felt like you have had those moments where you feel super tired, and the round is still going, and the other person is still going at you. So you've had these difficult situations, and it definitely feels less scary.
I think it goes beyond even the fighting aspect, though, because in a way, it's a performance. Not the jujitsu, but
Yes.
the anything where you're on a show. If you're doing a cage fight or Thai boxing or even grappling, if you're going on a show and you're not someone who plays like huge gigs or does comedy acts and stuff like that, and you have to get in front and perform in front of people, that's my only
Mm.
experience of having to get up and perform in front of people and having that nerve wracking feeling in your stomach and still having to calm yourself down and make sure that you execute it perfectly. And maybe that is why I feel more confident being confrontational in situations, even when there's no chance of a fight, because I've experienced that absolute goddamn panic. And in
Yeah.
comparison, none of these scenarios are as nerve wracking as a cage fight.
Oh yeah, for sure, man. I totally agree with that. I think there's definite benefit in even like doing that sort of thing, even if it's an amateur level, because the level of anxiety you get on those days is crazy. And if you're able to work through that, come out at the other end, one, it's a euphoric feeling as long as you don't lose terribly. But it's also like, oh shit, you know, I got through it. You know, it was scary, but I faced that fear and I went through it. And I think in a sense, in a gym, it's, you know, the fear is not always super high, but you are in a sense working through your fears um
Yeah,
to an extent.
and to move away a bit from the actual fighting aspect, you mentioned the anxiety and stuff there. A lot of people
Mm,
use martial arts in general to cope with anxiety and with depression and things like that. I find that really
yeah.
interesting. Um, if people use all sorts, because I think on one hand it's kind of a meditative practice, and I
So
think things like
um
running and stuff like that can be similar because you're completely lost
they're
in that
good.
moment to do it.
Yeah.
Um, but I think martial arts does that
um
meditative part
I
really
can
well.
speak a bit I can speak a bit from experience because I suffer with anxiety,
Hmm.
um, to a certain degree, like in the sense that, you know, I have taken medication for anxiety. So for me, when I come out of a jujitsu class, it's an incredible, like, I feel so good afterwards, especially after if I have a cold shower as well afterwards after the session. It's just like a massive boost for me. And it just, yeah, I don't know what it is. Whether I don't really get that. I didn't really get that with running um, as much. It
Hmm.
is a nice feeling, but with like a jujitsu session or even a Thai boxing session where I don't know what it is, man. If it's just like grueling and grinding, that when you finish it and you know you've put it you're all into that training session, you just feel great.
Is it? Well, I always have well, a few theories on it. Is it that you aren't thinking about anything else at the time? Because I mean, I've never suffered
Has
from
to be.
anxiety in a diagnosable sense, but you know, if I have
Mm.
stressful times at work or in life, I'll go to class and I'll come away from it just feeling brilliant because for 2 hours or so, I've just thought about something completely, well, completely other.
I no, I totally agree. I think you're exactly on the money there, because it is. I think, as you've said, it's a meditative process. You are focusing your mind into one thing, and outside distractions don't exist. Things that usually distract your mind and cause anxious thinking are not there, and you're thinking about, okay, I'm learning this technique and I'm trying to apply this technique, or I'm it's 1-2, the jab cross, so on. So yeah, I totally think you're on the money.
Well, I think that works especially well with jiu-jitsu, for example, because of the complexity of some of the moves. You get completely lost in it.
Yeah.
But then it's also got all the other benefits, of course, as any exercise would, of having that endorphin release and getting people to move and be active with it. So
Yeah,
obviously,
no,
as an exercise,
it's it,
it's got that clear benefit.
yeah, it's kind of a double whammy there.
Yeah, and I think what was it before? It was a woman who came to my school once, and I think she had terminal cancer, and she was saying that
Hmm.
the one thing you need if you get into situations like that is something to be passionate about.
Mm.
And consider the number of people who do jiu-jitsu who get so deep into it, just obsessed with it. It's just
Super
so
obsessed.
ingrained in the technique and in the culture. I've not
Yeah.
really had anything before martial arts that I could have said I was obsessed with in a healthy way for a really long time. I remember thinking
Yeah.
that when she came to the school, I was like, I don't have anything like that. But now I think I really do.
Yeah. Same with me, man. I mean, I didn't. I was fairly obsessed with Thai boxing, but BJJ is just another level for me.
Hmm.
Like just last night, I'd spent like an hour in bed before going to sleep just thinking about movement, and I'm not training.
Yeah, well, that's it. Especially with with BJJ, there's you're thinking about yourself doing it, and with MMA and boxing and stuff, there's seeing other people do it. You can remain
Mm.
passionate about it even without being in the sport directly. And I think in
Yeah,
terms
yeah,
of mental health, I think it depends on the gym. And I think jiu-jitsu does this better than anything else from personal experience. But the whole building a society aspect and building a sort of a local community and a culture and having that group of friends that are you could almost consider family, I think
yeah.
is super important. And it's something that a lot of people don't have the opportunity to build and to get.
We hope you enjoyed that episode. If you did, please consider subscribing to the podcast and checking us out on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram under the name Combat Thoughts. We'll see you next time.